What's behind a weird request of James and John? We are talking about Mark chapter 10, verses 35 to 45. Is there a weird motive for James and John seeking the highest places of honor? Let's talk about the story. What's the story of James and John? Now, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus to seek a favor. It was a peculiar request to grant them positions to sit at the right and left of Jesus' glory. Even though they appeared ready to undergo the requirement to achieve it, Jesus said it is not for him to grant these seats of honor to them. Why do James and John ask for a weird request? Peter, James, and John belonged to the inner circle of Jesus. They accompanied Jesus on important occasions like the transfiguration or the agony of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, James and John had heard Jesus rebuking Peter by saying, "Get behind me, Satan." Now, some scholars assume that James and John were taking this opportunity to gain an advantage over Peter, the third member of the inner circle. We are not sure of their motivation, but their request for two places of highest honor had no room to include Peter. What did James and John fail to see? It looks like a simple request, but James and John failed to see that Jesus was going to Jerusalem to die. The glory was through death. Now, Bartimaeus, the blind man Jesus heals, asked Jesus to restore his sight. But the disciples are becoming blind even by being close to Jesus. They cannot see. Why is the request for honor seats wrong? Now, in Jesus' time, people reclined on couches around a low table to sit at banquets or feast. James and John imagine Jesus as a king, and they will have the places of sitting at right and left as advisors of Jesus. Now, the problem with such a thinking is that the brothers are asking Jesus to fit into their plans, not to see what Jesus' plans are. They fail to hear Jesus' prediction about his impending death. They regarded the journey as a march towards military capture of Jerusalem. And that's where they got it wrong. Now, Jesus' action is worth noting. Jesus does not rebuke James and John, even after knowing that they made a very dumb request. Jesus asked the brothers a question: "Are you able to drink the cup that I drink and to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" The cup in the Old Testament refers to blessings, judgment, or death. Now, James and John are ready to accept the challenge, not understanding the consequences. When Jesus is arrested, they desert their master and flee for safety. James and John are thinking about a blessing. They do not account for the pain, sacrifice, and death. Obviously, later on, we realize that James was martyred by Herod Agrippa, and the details of John's death is not known. We assume that John's later life was not as he expected in this request of places of honor. How did Jesus resolve jealousy among the disciples? When the other disciples learned about the request of these brothers, they were upset because the two brothers were stealing their places of honor. And you know what Jesus says? You know that they who are recognized as rulers over the nations lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall not be so among you. But whoever wants to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever of you wants to become first among you shall be the servant of all. Now, Jesus used their behavior as a teaching. Jesus used the ambitions of John and James to teach about the kingdom of God and how it works. Jesus indicates that the kingdom behaviors upholds one who serves others, The honor is in service, not in power. Personal ambition will continue. People are tempted to be served rather than to serve. But we have to choose a kingdom behavior to serve others. Now, Jesus offers his own example. Jesus says, "For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Jesus came to serve. Both incarnation and crucifixion are acts of service. The passage allows us to understand why Jesus dies and what death means. Greatness is measured in the ability to serve others. And what can we learn from this passage? Unlike James and John, we are called to seek the good of others. We are called to stay open to how the kingdom of God operates and be part of it. We mostly seek request only for ourselves. God give me this or that. I say, change your prayer and it will change yourself. Like James and John, we too have hidden agendas to keep Peter away from inner circles or to usurp all the privileges. We are called to include others rather than exclude others. This is a very powerful message. Thank you for being part and watching this video, part of my channel. I appreciate you giving this video a like and share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Press the notification bell so that you may not miss out any of the videos that I upload here. Definitely, we will see you in the next video. And God bless you. See you again. Thank you for being part and watching this video, part of my channel. I appreciate you giving this video a like and share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Press the notification bell so that you may not miss out any of the videos that I upload here. Definitely, we will see you in the next video. And God bless you. See you again.